Clifford Timothy Kingsbury.
You are a Washington Commander.
Probably the most eventful offseason in quite some time for this Washington Commanders organization. The moves keep pouring in as Washington has found its new offensive coordinator, the guy who's going to develop our next quarterback, hopefully our franchise quarterback of the future for this team. And it is Cliff Timothy Kingsbury, former head coach of the Arizona Cardinals and Texas Tech Raiders, the guy who introduced Patrick Lavon Mahomes II to the world, the guy who coached Kyler Murray in Arizona, who coached Baker as a walk-on at Texas Tech, who coached Johnny Manziel during his Heisman campaign, and who most recently and most notably relevant to this team was the offensive coordinator. No, correction. He was the quarterback coach and a senior offensive analyst for the USC Trojans, who are currently quarterbacked by Caleb Williams, DC native and favorite to go number 1 in the NFL draft coming up on April 25th. This is a very interesting hire because I like Cliff Kingsbury a whole bunch as an offensive coordinator. Just like a saga we just recently went through with the Ben Johnson to Washington dramatics that just took place over this last week, some guys are just built to be a play caller. You know, I like to put it in human form. Some people are better employees than they are supervisors, managers, directors. Some guys are better as an employee. Some people are better as uncles and aunts than they are at being a parent. Sometimes you're an A1 substitute teacher. You can't run the class. You can't be the principal. But in a tight spot, you can come in and you can get the job done. Just like I always say when I talk about quarterbacks, a good backup quarterback is the most elite spare tire you can have. But a spare tire is only going to get you to a certain extent. It's not going to be reliable on the daily basis. You're not going to go a full season with a backup and expect results. Guys like Cliff Kingsbury are meant to be an X's and O's wizard, an offensive guru, a quarterback whisperer who calls plays. This guy is a bachelor, playboy. Look at this handsome devil. Listen to his ASMR sounding voice and look at the baddie that he has that's his girlfriend. This guy got fired from Arizona, and his immediate response was to buy 2 one-way tickets for him and his badass girlfriend to go to Thailand with no worries in the world. Two one-way tickets to Thailand because he was fired after recently receiving a 6-year extension through 2027. So Cliff ain't got no worries out here. He just wants to draw up offenses, bag bodies, score touchdowns, and then go home. Like we were talking in the group chat earlier. Jalen was like, Cliff Kingsbury ain't about that life, bro. He just wants to clock in his 8 hours of offense and then leave. He not locking himself in Ashburn in the office like Joe Gibbs. Cliff Kingsbury, through and through, is a play calling offensive coordinator. And that's that. And that's why this hire is huge. Nobody's poaching him to come back and coach their program. Maybe a college team will, but look what he just did to Las Vegas. Cliff Kingsbury has a history of decommitment because he did this same thing to USC back in 2018 when he took the Arizona Cardinals job. So it's interesting to me that USC circled the block with Cliff Kingsbury to bring him in to help with Caleb Williams there this year on Lincoln Riley's staff, because back in 2018, Cliff Kingsbury accepted the job to be the offensive coordinator for the USC Trojans. And they blocked his interviews with the New York Jets and Arizona Cardinals. And you know how Cliff Kingsbury responded to that? He resigned. He said, fuck this shit. I'm going to the league. My stock is never going to be hotter. Despite the fact that he did not produce winning seasons as the head coach of Texas Tech, he parlayed coaching Patrick Mahomes, coaching Manziel, coaching Baker. He parlayed his history of quarterback whispery into an NFL head coaching job, and he landed the Arizona Cardinals job, and he drafted a guy he had coaching tree history with in Kyler Murray in Arizona. He brought his variation of the air raid offense, but when you think of the air raid offense, you just think bombs away, 3 to 5 wide receiver sets, all vertical, not running the ball. But Cliff Kingsbury made it a basis very early on that the basis of this offense will go through the run game. And in this air raid system that he runs, the gaps between the linemen, the splits are a lot wider. You're opening up the passing lanes so the quarterback can have clear lanes to get the ball to the receivers, especially in Arizona where he had an undersized quarterback like Kyler Murray. But the fact that he had a dual threat guy running the air raid system there, the wide splits that the offensive linemen have not only open up passing lanes, they open up lanes for a quarterback with the running ability to make moves with his legs, because you're already getting the defense backed up and having to cover you vertically. You're opening lanes for a dual threat quarterback to attack with his legs. It started slow. They had their moments there in Arizona, but ultimately, Cliff is not a disciplinarian. Cliff is not a leader of men. Cliff is a offensive savant, and it stops there. Ellipses, ... And he ended up butting heads with the quarterback. He ended up butting heads with some of the skill players there, and it just ended up being a mess. He ended up getting fired after the 2021 season. But in their best season in Arizona, that offense couldn't be stopped. I remember an Arizona Cardinals team with Super Bowl aspirations as they set at 10-2, 12 weeks through the season. And Kyler Murray was looking like he was putting on an MVP candidacy that year. Cliff Kingsbury's offense did work in this league. Do not get it twisted because it did not work out. But Cliff is currently on his redemption arc, and it's clear he has his sights set on a return to the National Football League. So he recently accepted a job on Antonio Pierce's staff to be the offensive coordinator for the Las Vegas Raiders. But just like the decommitment history from the past, I guess whatever was said during his interview with Vegas was not what they decided to put pen to paper when it was time to go to the negotiating table. Cliff Kingsbury wanted at least a 3-year contract as the OC, and he wanted a little bit more money. Despite the fact that the Cardinals are still paying him through 2027, he wanted some more Skrilla. Bitch better have my money. And he wanted that extra year. So it turns out he pulls out of that job, and I guess his agent immediately got Washington on the phone. Skirt. So yeah, y'all are in position to maybe move up for Cliff's guy at USC. Y'all are currently in search of an offensive coordinator after hiring a defensive coach in Dan Quinn. Would you guys be interested in my client services? Because despite reports, I think Cliff is going to be pulling out of the Las Vegas Raiders job. And then comes the Washington Commanders, who immediately had Schefter, Pelissero, Albert Breer, Ian Rappaport, and company all singing the praises of Cliff Kingsbury to the Washington Commanders. I will never question the national insiders again, because they tried to warn me that the Ben Johnson thing was not a lock, not a slam dunk, any of the sort. So when they say this guy's a strong candidate, I'm going to believe it. Dan Quinn knows the importance of hiring the right offensive coordinator, because Dan Quinn has already seen success and failure as an NFL head coach. So he knows his lifeline will be ultimately connected to how good the quarterback we draft in the first round of this year's class is going to be. He needs to have someone who could come in, QB whisper this shit up, scheme up offense, and do his job, because Dan Quinn's going to have the defense right. I have no doubts at all that Dan Quinn will come in and get the most out of what we do have and add and implement guys to have his scheme flourish here because his defensive scheme flourishes everywhere he goes. He has the defensive Midas touch, if you will. But back to Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff can scheme it up. And Cliff has a very interesting spot he's coming from right now because Washington and Chicago hold the cards for the 2024 NFL draft. They are the first and second pick of said draft. And word on the street is Cliff Kingsbury has a lot of interest of coaching Caleb Williams in the NFL. He's looking for Caleb Williams to be his ticket back to the NFL, and he sees the rumblings and he hears the streets talking about Chicago may be in business. Why Washington would they trade back? Because we're one pick behind them, and they may have their sights set on pairing DJ Moore with an elite receiver like Marvin Harrison Jr. And to still receive him, they need to still be in the top 3 of the NFL draft because Marvin Harrison will not make it past Cliff Kingsbury's former team, the Arizona Cardinals, at pick 4. So I keep telling myself I'm not going to set myself or my heart up for disappointment in considering Caleb being an actual realistic option for the Washington Commanders, but it just makes so much sense. I want it so badly. I so desperately covet Caleb Williams here in DC because we're having all these conversations, all these juxtapositions about Drake May versus Jaden Daniels. You know who there's no argument about who the number 1 quarterback is in this class? It's Caleb Williams. And the guy who welcomed Patrick Mahomes to the world of football, Cliff Kingsbury, he knows exactly what the makeup of that kind of guy is. And he knows exactly what the capabilities of Caleb Williams is. He's coached Kyler. He's coached Baker. He's coached Mahomes, and he's coached Caleb. He knows what it looks like. He knows what the traits and intangibles look like. And he knows if Washington has a chance to get that guy, that is his ticket back to a successful NFL career as a coach. I don't think anyone's poaching him in the next couple of years, but it could end up being a succession plan type of ordeal where he ends up taking over the job if we ever move on from Dan Quinn. This is the perfect situation for Cliff Kingsbury in the league. He does not need to attempt to be a head coach again yet, unless the right thing opens up or unless he can parlay this OC job and work his way up to be the head coach here if we ever move past Quinn. But I don't think there's a better offensive coordinator situation for Washington, especially at this point of the game where most of the head coaching vacancies already have their staffs tightened up and a lot of the offensive coordinator crop has already been sifted through. So Washington ended up making out like bandits, despite the fact that they waited to the final opening to get their head coach in Dan Quinn. And they got right to business with defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. from Dallas, and now offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury from the University of Southern Cal, the current quarterback coach and senior offensive analyst to Caleb Williams's USC Trojans. Washington has their guy. Who's going to be the trigger man? Is it going to be Caleb? Is it going to be Jaden? Or is it going to be Drizzy Drake May, who I seen sitting courtside with Sam Howell at the USC game the other day? It's going to be a fun offseason, y'all. No, let me scratch that. It's already a fun offseason. We're just hitting the first week of February, and shit has already got real. Washington has Adam Peters at GM, Dan Quinn at head coach, and OC, Mr. Cliff Kingsbury. What a sexy ass offseason. And we're just getting started because Washington has the most cap space in the league. Washington has 5 top 100 picks, 6 in the top 107, and is slated to pick a franchise altering quarterback in the top 2 picks of the draft. And it could get very, very interesting if Chicago decides number 1 is for sale, because we would be the most logical and most convenient option, being that we are only 1 pick behind them. I think they have to take Caleb, but Chicago finna Chicago, so you never know if they decide to go Drake May or Marvin Harrison at 1, or fuck it, let's trade back 1 with Washington and then take Harrison. Because if we're gonna take a non-quarterback, we might as well get a little something on the side. But Cliff Kingsbury, your new offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. I hope it all goes well. I like the hiring, and just know our offense is going to be exciting as hell, even in the early Padawan stages, even in the Jedi training stage of this offense. It's going to be fun. It's going to be bombs away, and Brian Robinson's numbers are going to see an uptick like James Conner's did when his career was resurrected under Cliff Kingsbury. The run game is going to improve just as much as the pass game. Very excited to see how this goes. Terry, Jahan, Diami, if you're still on the roster, Mitchell Tinsley, you guys, everybody, get your track shoes ready. Get your cardio up because we're going streaking in the air raid offense. That's all I got for right now. Hail to the Washington Commanders. Like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you for 10,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Thank you guys for rocking with your boy and listen to me ramble and bloviate about my favorite franchise. I love this team and I love the community and discourse we have and everything surrounding this team. Thanks for rocking with your boy. Hail to the Washington Commanders. Bleed burgundy and gold until the death of us. Until next time, Commander Rio checking out.